Hey everyone, my name is Josh. Josh Morales. I am a .NET developer, and I'm here to introduce to you and talk about .NET Blazor. And it is a framework to rule them all, as you will see. So before we get into what it is, let me introduce myself. I am a .NET enthusiast. I've been using .NET since 2004. It was .NET 1.0 came out in 2002. And I actually started using VB.NET when I started out and jumped to C# pretty quick because that's where it was at. And I've been doing it for about 20 years or so. I built and run McAllenGarageSales.com, McAllenNext.com, which actually does run on Blazor. I currently am employed by the American College of Cardiology out in Washington, D.C. And I do freelance under PageInit Solutions, PageInit.net, where I just create solutions using .NET, the .NET framework for stuff. I'm very enthusiastic about this platform and framework. And I really, before I get started, I do want to express my appreciation, especially to RGV Cyber for hosting me. I know you guys are much more into the nitty-gritty of security and all that stuff, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about code and a little bit more nerdy stuff that I'm into. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here, to them sharing the floor with me to do that. So thank you very much, and thank you all for listening to me talk about this, nerd out on this stuff. So what is Blazor? Blazor is a UI framework that Microsoft created to build web apps where you can build these sites using C# and HTML. It actually runs native C# code in the browser using WebAssembly, or will stream the HTML to the browser in real time using WebSockets and the technology that they call SignalR, which is basically WebSockets, which is just real-time communication. There's absolutely no JavaScript required for this interactivity, which is really interesting because, we are in this, most web technologies now, whether it's React or Vue.js or Angular, you've got this JavaScript ecosystem using NPM, and that's what you compile into your web app and you publish it, and that's what runs your website. And especially with enterprise customers who use a lot of .NET in the background, you're doing a lot of translation between the backend server, which is all .NET, C# classes and code, and then you've got to translate that into models that will run on the web using JavaScript. So you've got kind of like this impedance mismatch that you have to manage in the middle. Well, Blazor eliminates all that by running native C# code in the browser, and JavaScript is never involved. That doesn't mean you can't use JavaScript, but it is a completely different way of writing apps where you don't have to rely on JavaScript. You actually use the same code that you run in the back end to run your front end. And I'll show you what that looks like, and it's pretty cool. So Blazor's actually come a long way. I don't recall exactly which .NET version it came out with, but originally it was kind of two flavors. You had the one that ran on the server, and it would use WebSockets to basically stream the HTML to the browser and give you this real-time connectivity. And so if you looked at the browser tools and you would actually see like the data streaming, and if you click the button, it would kind of rehydrate the HTML in real time, but it was using this WebSocket connection. And so you had to always be connected to the server. It gave you really fast interactivity, and you can run really heavy workloads on the server and then just feed the UI to the browser. And so you got really highly reactive applications, but they had to constantly be connected. So if your users navigated away from your page and came back, you would see a loading screen because it had to reconnect and reestablish that connection. So you had kind of this trade-off between great interactivity, but required connectivity. And then the other was, shortly after, was WebAssembly, which actually, when you visited a website, would download the entire .NET runtime into the browser and then run the application fully in the browser, disconnected from the server. And this was cool because it kind of is analogous to the way Vue.js or Angular or React, all of these apps that are like single-page applications that also run in the browser. But what's cool about this is that it pulls in the full .NET runtime. So you can do things like image, like what do you call it? Have people upload an image and put a filter on it, and use C# libraries to do that in the browser without having to upload it to the server. It's actually happening in the browser. They can disconnect from the internet, be fully offline, and it's all just running in the browser because it has a unified runtime inside the browser that will execute your application. So you kind of had to trade off between, well, do I want like real-time connectivity and immediate, access to data and server-side offload processing, or do I want to be able to support disconnected scenarios and let everything run in the browser? And so for a long time, you kind of had to make that trade-off. With .NET 8 and up, they finally unified these models into Blazor United, where you actually can just have a single project where everything can run in that one project, and it actually will allow you to decide, not at the application level, not at just the page level, but even at the individual component level. If you got a little widget that shows you the weather or something like that, just that one little part can run on the server or on the client. You have complete control of where you want your stuff to run. And so, and even better than that is when you go to it with this unified model, if you go to a web page and you configured it correctly, the first time that you go to it, it will actually launch off the server. But in the background, it'll download the runtime into the browser. And then the next time the user comes back to it, now it's on the client, and they can completely disconnect. And now they're fully offline and using the WebAssembly version. And it does that all in the background, completely automatic for you. And you can mix and match based on the needs of what it is that you're presenting for the user. So if you need that real-time connectivity, you have it. If you need the offline connectivity, or all in the browser, you have it, and you don't have to decide application-wide. You can actually go down granularly to the component level and decide how you want to do it. And that's really exciting. This was when Blazor really started to become a mature platform for creating applications on the web. And it comes down to basically 4 rendering modes. You have 4 options when you're building your Blazor application. The most basic is a static server. This is just, you could think of this as just raw HTML. There's no interactivity. The server will run your web page, load it up, get all the HTML, spit it out to the browser, and then you're done. There's no interactivity, but it's fast, and it all runs on the server, and you got that. If you're not doing anything but presenting an about page, you don't need the interactivity, you don't need the sockets run. The old server-side Blazor where you had this web sockets. So if you connect to the website, and I'll demonstrate this in a moment, where you open up the browser tools and you load up the page, you'll actually see a WebSocket open. As you click buttons and you see the interactivity happening, that's happening through that WebSocket connection where it's refreshing the HTML in real time. And then third option is a client-side rendering. That is the single-page application paradigm, similar to Angular, similar to Vue.js, similar to React, where you push the entire application to the browser, and now it runs on the client side, and you don't need the server at all. And then finally, interactive auto. That is what I mentioned about how it's smart enough to start you with the server-side rendering, and then in the background download the application so that it can run on the client in future loads and everything like that. And what's cool about that is because it's interactive server-side first, you don't lose the benefit that most JavaScript platforms like Angular and Vue.js have, where you don't have SEO support. Google scans your site and it just sees a blank page because it didn't load anything, unless you put in a bunch of server-side stuff, and that's a hassle. This is built in. You automatically get server-side rendering. It hydrates on the client side and then takes over so that you can have that interactivity, and it's all automatically done for you. Now, this isn't to say it's all peaches and roses, because that hydration does give you some caveats. It's difficult to maintain state across that hydration, and it's especially difficult to maintain session state and especially authentication state because your users need to be able to log in, but they log in on the server side, they log in on the client side. You need to maintain those things together. So there is still a little bit of juggling that you have to do. And I guess that's kind of the sacrifice that you might need to make. But if that isn't the purpose of your application, this can give you a lot of interactivity really quickly, really cheaply, and easily without having to juggle two completely different platforms on the back end and the front end. So let's see. Let's just show this in action. So let me pull up my Visual Studio here. And I just realized I can't see my Visual Studio because it's now over there. All right, so let's see. This is a solution, and I will provide the source code for this so you can download it for yourself and run it and see it in action. Now, you'll notice that there's two projects, the web and the client. This client is an optional project that you can use to put your the client-side components, the one that run in the browser, in a separate project. And the reason that you want to do that is because there are certain things that, because it's running in the browser, you can't do. Obviously, you can't access the file system. You can't access the database. This is all running in the browser. The browser doesn't have any way to connect to those things. And so by separating it into the client project, you can kind of separate those concerns and say, okay, this page should run on the client, but it can't natively access the file system. It has to do an HTTP call using, to get the data that it needs. So that's why there's two projects, but you don't have to do that. This is just more of a convenience thing. But the main project here, this is an ASP.NET Razor project, and I would love to talk about this in more detail in a future talk if anybody's interested. But this is basically Microsoft's web platform for creating websites as a hosted model. So like Ruby on Rails or whatever, HTML, like this is what they use to serve websites. So if I open up one of these components, like let's open up the counter server, you can see here that I've just got a bunch of HTML here, nothing crazy. And then I've got a code block here that has some properties. And then when I click the button here, which is called, when I click this actual button, you can see it's just linked directly to the HTML element. I'm going to increase the counter. And so if I run this and go to my browser and pull that over, and I go to this counter page, so you can see here, this is the counter server. It's running on the server here. And if I click the button, it doesn't do anything, because the initial state, if you don't tell it to do anything, is the static server-side rendering. It renders the page, shows you the HTML, and then it's done. So what we need to do is go back to the counter page and enable the interactivity by turning that on here. So if I turn that on and I remove my typo there, let me pull it back on my screen so I can see what the heck I'm doing here. Where to go? No, come back. Okay, there we go. All right, so I put it back where what did I do? There we go. I turned on the interactivity. I'm going to reload. And now, this thing. There we go. So go back to counter server. And there we go. You can see it's increasing. So the interactivity is there. And if I pull up the network tab here, where are we? I should not realize that I needed to do this. There we go, network tab, and I go to WebSockets, which I don't see here for some reason. Oh, here it is, sockets. Let me reload this page. You can see here, there's a WebSocket communicating with Blazor, and that is where it is doing its thing. But because I put a photo if I go to a different page, and I come back to it, you can see that, oh, is it an interactive auto? Oh yeah, so this is interactive server. Sorry, this is still running on the server. So that socket is still going to be open. But if I go to this other counter page, this one is configured with interactive auto. So what you're going to see when I click on it, it's going to say server, and then now it's going to say browser. So the socket did connect, and then it disconnected. So now I am no longer using the sockets to connect. It's all running on the server, on the browser, on the client. So if I go back home, clear this out, and go back to the counter, it's no longer using the WebSockets because it has fully downloaded into the browser. I could turn my Wi-Fi off and it'll still work. So if you wanted to have some kind of offline connectivity, this would give you that. And that's what's really cool about it. And again, if you look at what I'm doing in the actual website, it is all just inline HTML with some code that's really easy to follow, really easy to read. There's no, completely separate application that I have to manage with this data beyond the HTML. It's embedded right into it using C#. So if you know C#, you can use this to write your web pages and get them done really quick. But it doesn't end there. So here's what's really cool about Blazor. One of the third model that it supports is hybrid native application execution, which means I can actually build native apps for desktop and mobile using this same exact technology. So I have here in this project a native solution, and this is it is running a technology by Microsoft called MAUI, M-A-U-I, which stands for, what did it stand for? I forgot. Multi-platform app user interface. And it renders Blazor in a web view inside of the application, but it gives you native access to the APIs of the operating system. So you can access the battery, you can access the camera, you can access the file system. You have full access to the platform to run your apps natively on the application through that web view. So here I just created a very simple, it's basically a copy of the site. So if I open up the components here and I go to pages, you can see I have the exact same setup here for counter. Looks just like the one that we did. Same code, same HTML, everything's exactly the same. But if I run it, and I'm going to change this first to Windows. I want to see this on my Windows machine. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this. Give that a second to build and run. Where'd you go? There it is. Let me pull it onto the screen. And there it is. And you can see there's my device. There's my battery life. My orientation is landscape. This is actually reading the device information using that Blazor stuff. And if I go in, I can actually go in and select the camera. I can actually open up the camera. I can take a picture. And I'll accept that. Boom. And it actually will write this picture into my computer. It not only didn't just write it to like the screen, it actually captured that. Is it this one? Yep. So if I go here into my pictures folder, this is the capture that it just did. And I will pull it over just to prove that I am not lying. There it is. And I can actually do the same thing. I deployed the application to my phone. This is the exact, and actually, let me show it to you here first. So if I go and I change the platform from Windows machine to, let's see it. I can't see a damn thing. Okay, yeah. So I go to Android emulator. I'm going to select my emulator and I'm going to launch it there. And let me pull up that and put it on the screen. There goes. And there it is. Battery, orientation, everything pulling from the thing. I have access to the same APIs. I can take a photo. It uses the emulator, so it's going to do this little dancing guy here. Take that picture. And I don't know why that didn't work, but it does. And again, same thing on my phone, same exact application deployed actually onto my phone. I can pull up the camera, get the same thing, take a picture of this wonderful audience. Everybody say, hey, woo! Take a picture, select it as okay, and there you all are. All of those platforms using the exact same web, one project, one solution, one deployment, multiple platforms. Supports Mac, Linux, Android, iOS, Windows from one code base. And one thing I skipped over accidentally, sorry, is the real-time connectivity of this Blazor is pretty cool, because if I go to, oh wait, yeah. No, that's not it. Let me actually go to this path here. And there you go. So if y'all want to go ahead and scan that and do your voting, and I'll do the same because I'm going to vote for beer. And you can see as you vote in real time, this is all happening as you vote. Everything changes. That Blazor connectivity on the server is doing this all in real time to all of your phones through that web sockets to give you real-time connectivity. And it's all just a couple of lines of code. I didn't have to wire up anything. Blazor takes care of all of it for you. So it is a very robust, very powerful, and very fun platform to use because you can do a lot of really cool stuff with it. And again, you can share your code between web, desktop, and mobile, and get native access to your devices. If you want, you can scan this. This has the GitHub repo with the code. If you want to download that onto your machine, get the free copy of Visual Studio Community Edition, which is 100% free to use. You could probably also use Visual Studio Code if you're on Mac or Linux, and some other resources if you want to get started on Blazor and have some fun with it. One thing I want to mention before my time is up is I am trying to gauge interest and get people involved in starting an RGV.net user group. If you have any interest in learning more about stuff like this, C#, ASP.NET, Blazor, Azure, anything having to do with this platform, I could talk about it all day long, and I would love to talk about it with somebody else besides my wife, who's probably tired of hearing it. So please scan, join. There's a mailing list, there's a Facebook group, there's a website. Go check it out. Tell your friends. If you got anybody who's interested in developing in software or web and any of that stuff, we'd love to have you on board and grow together. Again, thank you to RGV Cyber for letting us piggyback on this audience. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Check it out. Let me know if you have any questions, and go download it and try it out because it's a lot of fun. Any questions? Yep.
I may not have understood, but so does that mean there's like tokens stored? There's no API call if you're not connected, or
Yeah, so it gets tricky. On the client side, you're going to use like JWT tokens and stuff like that. It's obviously going to go through the server. But what I mean is that if your application is running fully client side, then if you're going to reconcile that with server side API access, you have to bridge that authentication. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's cumbersome. So if you rely on a lot of roles and stuff like that, this might not be the best platform to implement that, but it can be done, certainly. Just involves a lot of setup. Anything else?
I'm not sure if I really but mentioned that the first time user visits the website, kind of has to, I guess, fed from the server, I guess, the website. But then the second time, and the consecutive times after, that's not necessary anymore. I guess it's like some type of caching in some type of way.
Yes, yes. And again, this is something that you as the developer would control. So if you don't want them to do that, you don't have to have them do that. If you want it to be fully client side, fully server side, it's up to you. But if you want to have that fallback, then when they go to the site the first time, to avoid the download time of the runtime onto their browser, it gets it from the server. And then the server in the background hydrates the client side with the runtime and caches it in their browser, yes. And then all subsequent requests will be run from that runtime in their browser. Yeah. You had a question? Say again? For Blazor? Well, again, I built McAllen Next. Actually, McAllenNext.com. If you haven't been there, it tells you everything that's happening in the city of McAllen, social updates, events, and stuff. Check it out every week because it's always telling you what's going on. And I'd love the feedback and see people using it. But I actually built that as a playground to experiment with Blazor, just to kind of see how it is. And I definitely learned a lot about the kind of interactivity that you can get with it. I have not had the opportunity to build Blazor in a professional capacity. I think there's still, it's very, I mean, Microsoft is very enterprise. Everybody knows that they're, you know, if you're a startup, you're not using .NET technologies. But it is a very fun and interesting platform, and definitely has its places. And the native stuff is especially fun. I definitely am trying to experiment with building the apps for McAllen X and McAllenGarageSales.com and stuff, using Blazor to give me that native interactivity without having to learn Rust or Go or Android's whatever proprietary technology they use. And that's what's cool about it, is that it's portable. You learn this, you can build iOS, Android, Mac, desktop, Linux. You can build them all with the same code base. So it's very versatile and worth exploring. Any others? Do I hate JavaScript? I hate Node. I'll tell you that. I cannot stand Node. It is a lie. Their NPM stuff is a nightmare. They just got hacked. I know NuGet's not impervious to that, but NuGet is a better experience than NPM in my. But I don't hate JavaScript. If you use Blazor, you will hate JavaScript because it is actually very cumbersome to interop with JavaScript. You have to actually call like these weird backends. But that's really more of like, if you're building Blazor, you shouldn't be using JavaScript. You really should be like, it's a totally different thing. So if you're trying to shoehorn JavaScript into it, you're doing something wrong. But no, I don't hate JavaScript. I just like C# better. All good? Thanks again, guys, to everybody. Really much appreciated. Thank you.